Well, a warm welcome to today's talk, and we're going to be thinking about the importance of optimizing the immune system, because we believe now that everyone is going to be exposed to this virus, and it's just making sure the probability of us getting sick is as low as possible. We've talked about vaccination, of course, we've talked about vitamin D so many times on this channel. The one I want to think about today is often overlooked, and it is zinc. The importance of zinc for immunity. So no attempts to entertain you, just give you the information that I believe is going to be really quite important, especially as we come into the next few months where this virus is really going into the endemic stage. So here we have this information here. If we have the technology, yes, I think we do. So zinc and immune function. The biological basis of altered resistance to infection. Now, this is the title of a paper, and this is kind of summarising what we know already about this, but there is new stuff coming out now. Zinc is known to play a central role in the immune system. There you go, it's a simple statement of fact. And zinc-deficient persons experience increased susceptibility to a variety of pathogens, bacteria and viruses. That's, again, fairly accepted fact. It's clear that zinc affects multiple aspects of the immune system: innate immunity, which acts against a variety of infecting agents, and acquired specific immunity, which acts particularly against individual viruses and bacterial infections. Zinc is crucial for normal development and function of cells mediating nonspecific immunity, such as neutrophils and natural killer cells. So these are working against a wide variety of organisms. But zinc deficiency also affects the development of acquired specific immunity, activation of T lymphocytes that we've talked about so many times that are so important, and B lymphocyte helpers also. So we see it's important for these lymphocytes, these B and these T cells, that we know are so crucial to immune function. B lymphocyte development and antibody production, particularly immunoglobulin type G, is compromised in immune deficiency. And we know that the immunoglobulin type G is the more important one because it's the longer lasting one. The immunoglobulin type M lasts for a short period of time, whereas the immunoglobulin G is around for weeks and months. And the macrophage is particularly affected by zinc deficiency. Now, macrophages are these big cells that derive from monocytes, and there's monocytes circulating in the blood, and then when they go into the tissues they become macrophages, and they do all sorts of things, release numerous types of locally acting cytokines that regulate the whole immune response. So an absolutely vital cell, and macrophage is adversely affected by zinc deficiency. It's kind of that simple. Zinc is needed by these key immunological mediators. Basic cellular functions such as DNA replication require zinc, and RNA transcription, cell division, cell activation. So the RNA transcription is the way that the information from the DNA of the immune cells is coded into the RNA of the immune cells to make the protein of the immune cells. That's required for cell division and cell activation. All these things are essential, and that's fairly well known. Now, here's some newer information coming up now from the frontiers of immunology. Now, you can check that reference there out for yourself, and in fact I would encourage you to read this full article. It only takes 2 or 3 hours, and it's quite an accessible article to read. Nothing too technically difficult in it. Zinc deficiency results in altered numbers and dysfunction of all immune cells. All immune cells. It's so important. Suboptimal zinc states have increased risk for infectious diseases, autoimmune disorders and cancer. Now, that's a statement of fact, right? Now, what I often do is I'll try and state facts, but as an academic writer I always try and give the evidence for it. So that particular sentence there, suboptimal zinc states have an increased risk for infectious disease, autoimmune disorders and cancer. Now, here's the evidence that I've used for that. Now, I'm not going to go through this in detail. It's all there. It's all quite clickable if you want to. But that's the sort of, they're the references that substantiate that statement. And this article we're looking at now is well referenced all the way through, and I'm using those references. So everything I'm giving you here is my understanding of the research and the current state of knowledge. Now, I'm not going to show you a host of references again, but that is what we're doing to get this information. So this information is as accurate as I can understand it and relate it to you. Right, risk groups for zinc deficiency. People that are malnourished, of course. And I would add to that vegetarians are probably at increased risk of zinc deficiency as well, and vegans especially are at risk. Elderly patients with various inflammatory and autoimmune diseases are more at risk for zinc deficiency. Mild zinc deficiency is largely subclinical, and if it's a bit like high blood pressure. High blood pressure, at least initially, is subclinical. You don't know you've got it. Or early diabetes, you don't know you've got it, but it can be doing damage. And zinc deficiency is the same as that. Mild zinc deficiency is not going to cause clinical features, but it will be compromising your immune system, and it's unnoticed by most people. World Health Organization assume, and again in the article, if you click the links, there's all the references for this, assumes that at least 1/3 of the world's population is affected by zinc deficiency. That is a lot of people. Zinc deficiency is responsible for 16% of all deep respiratory infections worldwide. The deep respiratory infections are the one down in the lung tissues, like the pneumonias and things like that. So that's pretty powerful statement there. Zinc deficiency is responsible for 16% of all lower respiratory tract infections worldwide. Supplementation, for which minimal to no side effects are known in the World Health Organization statement. Now, I wouldn't particularly agree with this. Supplements must be taken at exactly the right dose, of course. So it does depend on the dose and how well that is regulated. But this study here, I think it's from Spain. I'm going through Google Translate, but I'm pretty sure it's accurate. 10 to 20% of people in Europe are also zinc deficient or have suboptimal amounts of zinc. So this one is well worth considering. Zinc protects the human body from entering the virus. So zinc protects the human body from entering of the virus. So what that means is that the virus finds it harder to get into the cells, to infect the cells in the first place, if people have plenty of zinc. If people are low in zinc, then it's easier for the virus to get into the cells. And this is essential for tissue barriers equipped with cilia, which of course are these wafty hair-like things that waft up the mucus, and antimicrobial peptides, which are proteins in the mucus, like lysozyme and interferons. Now, interferons interfere with the ability of the cells to go, the viruses to go from cell to cell. Lysozymes, it's like there's lysosomes in tear, there's lysosomes in saliva. These are antiviral and antibacterial chemicals in the products of these mucus membranes. And it's also the zinc is also necessary for the expression of tight junction proteins, because what you have here is between individual cells in the respiratory tract there are tight junctions, and you don't want the virus to be able to slip in between two of these junctions, so it's necessary for that. Mucociliary clearance system is affected by zinc. This is the way that the cilia waft up the mucus to get stuff out of the lungs that you then cough up. Physiological concentrations of zinc increase cilia beat frequency. In other words, the cilia will beat more slowly if you're zinc deficient. If you've got normal amounts of zinc, they'll beat more quickly. And of course, that's essential for clearing the lungs from infection. Zinc-dependent alterations in gene expression by pneumocytes. Pneumocytes are the cells lining the lungs, so that keeps them in the best possible condition. And there's associations with interferons. They're a bit complicated, not going to go into them, but interferons are necessary. A virally infected cell will release interferons, which will inform adjacent cells that the virus infection is there, and that forms a kind of a firewall around about the virally infected cell. So all very important. Zinc directly inhibits viral replication. Direct antiviral effects of zinc have been demonstrated. Now, I'm not going to read out this list of viruses, but this top one here, this coronaviridae virus, I don't pretend to be that familiar with it, but I've looked it up and it is quite similar to the coronavirus. And all those other viruses as well, there's been direct antiviral effects of zinc deficiency have been demonstrated. So plenty of zinc, you're more resistant to these viruses. Not enough zinc, you're more prone to these viruses, this wide range of viral infections. So really, why should SARS coronavirus 2 be any different? It was suggested that zinc can prevent fusion with the host membrane, stopping the virus getting into the cell. Decreases viral polymerase function. So the polymerase is the enzyme which allows the virus to make more viral RNA, and it inhibits that, so it's an antiviral property. Blocks viral particle release, because of course once the viral particles have been produced inside an affected cell, they must be released into the mucous membrane to infect the next cell along, and it inhibits that. So adequate levels of zinc are important for all of these wide range of immune functions. It also destabilizes the viral envelope as well if there's plenty of zinc. Zinc balances an immune response during infectious disease. So as well as people that are deficient in zinc, it's a bit like vitamin D. Lack of zinc is going to result in immunosuppression, but lack of zinc can also result in the over-inflammatory syndromes that we can get, such as causes the acute respiratory distress syndrome. So it makes immunity adequate, but also limits the inflammatory processes that we don't want too much of. So without enough zinc, you're going to get more immune infections, and you're going to get more viral infections. Let me start that again. If you haven't got enough zinc, you're going to get more viral infections. And the viral infections you do get are more likely to cause an inflammatory response that we don't want. So adequate amounts of zinc, important for both of those things. Movement and overactivation of immune cells into the lungs. You don't want too many immune cells in the lungs, because they will release their digestive enzymes that are designed to kill viruses and bacteria. But of course, if they're released into the lung tissue, they'll also damage the lungs, which is the last thing we want. And we know this happens so well because this is what happens in the disease process called emphysema. This is a well-known disease process. Movement and overactivation of immune cells into the lungs, not good. And plenty of zinc can reduce that. So you get the right amount of cells going into the lungs doing the right amount of work, but they're not overactive, causing the inflammatory response. It's exactly what we want, because we don't want acute respiratory distress syndrome, where the alveoli fill up with inflammatory fluid. I did tell you this one would be hard work, but we're getting through lots of really important science. We need zinc for lymphocyte development and function, and that zinc supplements can reverse lymphopenia. Now, this is a direct quote from this paper. So people that are deficient in zinc will develop lymphopenia. Now, penia means not enough of, so lymphopenia will be a deficiency of lymphocytes. And then when you correct the zinc, when you give the people the zinc, that will increase the number of lymphocytes. It will reverse the lymphopenia, which is good if people are zinc deficient. Zinc is indispensable in the signalling cascade of T cell receptors as a second messenger. So in other words, what this means is zinc is necessary for the initial communication with the T cells and the ongoing signalling within the cytoplasm of the T cells, these so-called secondary messenger systems. Zinc is required for B cell maturation and function. Then zinc supplementation in respiratory infection is the next topic. So a row of successful supplementation studies focusing on respiratory tract infections have been carried out and do show efficacy of zinc in people that are deficient of zinc. In most cases, prophylactic zinc supplement was more effective than the therapeutic option. So in other words, people did much better if they took the zinc and made sure their zinc levels were optimum before they got the infection. If they waited to get the infection, it was too late. And this is a bit like vitamin D again. If you give people that are acutely ill large doses of vitamin D, it's probably not going to do them much good, because it takes the body a couple of weeks to activate the vitamin D into the active form. So it will benefit them, but not for 2 or 3 weeks after that. And it's the same with zinc. We want to make sure that our zinc levels are optimized at the time we get infected. And the only way to do that is to anticipate the fact that I am going to get infected, which of course I am, because everyone's going to get infected with SARS coronavirus too. And if everyone has adequate amounts of zinc, I believe I'm giving evidence here that that's going to reduce the morbidity and mortality that the virus will cause as it moves into its endemic phase. Studies have shown reduced symptoms, reduced severity, reduced frequency and duration of the common cold after zinc administration. So there you go, this is working against the common cold, and of course about 30% of common colds are caused by common cold coronaviruses. So pretty interesting stuff here. Zinc supplements of children in developing countries. When you supplement zinc to children in developing countries, reduce pneumonia-specific mortality by 15%. That means 15% less children die. And 19% of pneumonia people getting sick is reduced by 19%. So it reduces morbidity by 19% and deaths by 15% in the developing world, where children are often deficient of zinc. Nearly done. Risk groups and symptoms of COVID-19 and zinc deficiency reveal a large overlap. Now, this is quite interesting here. Now, I'm not going to go into this in detail, but this is one of those Venn diagrams. Now, what we have here we have the features of COVID-19. Here we have the features of zinc deficiency. And these features here are common to COVID-19 and zinc: elderly, obesity, atherosclerosis, bronchial asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, dialysis. All the risk factors we've been talking about for COVID are also in risk factors in zinc deficiency. So that big overlap should give everyone pause for thought, really. Low serum zinc levels are regularly observed in, and here we see that overlap, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, bronchial asthma, cardiovascular disease, autoimmune disease, kidney disease. These risk factors that we know about. Now, this doesn't mean to say that these people are prone to COVID-19 because they're low in zinc, but it does mean to say that there's an overlap, that there's a correlation here between these two things. 57.5% of elderly in nursing home residents in the United States showed significant decreased zinc intake. Who died most in the first wave? Of course, it was people in care homes. Zinc supplementation was able to reconstitute immune function in elderly zinc deficient individuals. So again, pretty clear, if people are deficient in zinc, then giving the zinc is going to re-optimize their immune system. During physiological inflammation responses, zinc is additionally redistributed to the tissue, resulting in resulting in serum zinc. No, resulting in serum hypozinkemia. Got it right eventually. Hypozinkemia. In the UK, would put an A in there as well. In other words, when people have an inflammatory infection, the zinc goes from the blood to the area of inflammation. And if the zinc's gone from the blood into the areas of inflammation, it's no longer in the blood, therefore the levels of zinc in the blood go down, and that is hypozinkemia, which of course we don't want for the immune reasons we've looked at. So if you've got adequate amounts of zinc to begin with, then that is less likely to be a problem. In critically ill patients, persistent low serum zinc was associated with recurrent sepsis, which of course is a problem in COVID. Serum zinc levels were inversely correlated with mortality from sepsis. Again, good zinc levels would reduce mortality from sepsis by that correlation. Zinc influences thrombocyte aggregation and coagulation. And again, we know about this, unfortunately, from so many videos on this talk. COVID-19, poor outcomes in patients with zinc deficiency. This is a study here from the Journal of Infectious Diseases. I'm just going to quote the conclusion here. The study data clearly show that a significant number of COVID-19 patients were zinc deficient. These zinc deficient patients developed more complications, and the deficiency was associated with a prolonged hospital stay and increased mortality. Read the paper for yourself. It's there. Foods containing zinc: meat, shellfish, seeds, nuts, dairy, eggs, whole grain, legumes and potatoes. But too much whole grains and legumes can actually reduce zinc absorption. Oh, and the good news there is dark chocolate. not milk chocolate with lots of sugar in it, but dark chocolate contains zinc. Recommended daily allowances according to WebMed. Boys and men aged over 14 years of old need 11 milligrams a day. Women 19 and older, 8 milligrams a day. Pregnant women 11 to 18 milligrams a day. Lactating women 12 to 14 milligrams a day. So there we can see I need 11 milligrams a day. Women need 8 milligrams of zinc per day. And according to this recommended daily allowance, the difference is that men lose quite a lot in seminal fluid. There's a lot of zinc in seminal fluid. That's what makes the difference. So there we go, quite a lot about zinc there. Now, what should we do about this? Well, I think it would be a really good idea if quite a lot of doctors were to advise patients that could be zinc deficient to take maybe a 15 milligram supplement, maybe 3, 4, 5 times a week, depending on the individual. Someone like me, for example, I might take a supplement of 15 milligrams of zinc about 3 times a week. And it would be good if Chris Whitty and Anthony Fauci were to advise something like about 15 milligrams of zinc 3 or 4 times a week as this virus goes into the endemic phase. Then people are much less likely to be zinc deficient when the virus comes along. Of course, it's not for me to prescribe, but doctors may choose to give 15 milligrams of zinc 3, 4, 5 times a week as we go into the endemic phase. So that is some thinking on zinc. So interesting to think that 80 to 90% of us in Europe probably are not zinc deficient, but that 10 to 20% that could be zinc deficient, that will make a difference to the immune system. So we can say from the science that we have that people are deficient in zinc will have compromised immunity for viral and bacterial infections. It's really a pity that more studies have not been done specifically on COVID-19 and zinc levels. Part of the problem, of course, is zinc is readily available everywhere in the world. Pharmaceutical companies can't patent it. It's cheap everywhere in the world, so there's not a lot of money to be made from doing large-scale clinical trials on zinc. But really, it's a pity that governments haven't done this, and it's somewhat surprising that governments haven't done this. So let's hope there are some government guidelines on zinc fairly soon as we move into this endemic phase. And feel free to ask your members of parliament or your congressmen to stimulate the appropriate health executives in our governments to so advise. Okay, that was pretty quick data burst, but I want to get that out. Pretty important stuff. This is not instead of vaccination, of course. This is as well as vaccination. Thank you for watching.